Welcome, faithful. Welcome to the first edition of Nothing But Fantasy, brought to you by the guys here at Nothing But Niners. I'm here with my boy Dillon. How you doing, Dillon?
Not too bad. How about you, man?
Man, you guys will normally see our newest member, Steve, in this position. He had a bit of a situation come up, so I'm just filling in for him this week. We're still going to go ahead and bring you guys our starts and sits for Nothing But Fantasy for week 2 of the NFL season. I'll kick it over to Dillon, give you guys a little more information of what to expect from this segment moving forward.
So Nothing But Fantasy is just something we wanted to bring you here at Nothing But Niners. It's going to be really simple. I think Zach hit a little bit on what exactly it is. Each week we're going to give you one quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 tight end and 1 defense that you can start, and then the same for who you can sit that week based on their matchups. And then at the end of it, we're also going to throw in 2 waiver pickups, 1 from each of us. Just some free agency guys that you might want to take a look into based on how they've been playing lately.
All right, so without further ado, let's get started, bud. Why don't you start off with your quarterback for this week?
All right, this week I wanted to go with Jameis Winston just because I really like what Tampa Bay is doing over there. We didn't get to see him in week 1 because they were supposed to come together with Miami and have that game, but due to the effects of Irma, they had to cancel that game and go ahead and give them an early bye week. But I'm really excited to see how that Tampa Bay offense runs. Unfortunately, they don't have Doug Martin in there due to a little suspension. He'll be back soon enough, but that passing offense is very stacked right now. Everybody knows Mike Evans' name, especially if you're a fantasy owner. And now they have Deshaun Jackson, O.J. Howard, and Chris Godwin over there too. 2 of those are rookies, so you can't be fully sure of what they're going to do, but they all bring threats to the receiving game, and it just makes it really interesting for what Jameis Winston could do for fantasy owners this week.
Yeah, that's a great pick, man. It's interesting. Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston came out back-to-back in the same draft, and we're kind of witnessing both of their respectively in a similar fashion. They're both arming their quarterbacks with really, really high-powered weapons in, Deshaun Jackson, Corey Davis, Mike Evans, O.J. Howard, Delaney Walker. See how they're giving these young quarterbacks some weapons to work with, and it's nice to see because you sometimes see young quarterbacks get thrown to the wolves immediately coming out. So
what I love about both that draft in particular is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Tennessee Titans perfectly did the NFL young quarterback's dream. They got their guy, and then they surrounded him with players. I just love the way that they did it.
Yeah, it's definitely something to envy. So we'll go ahead and move on. For my quarterback, I'm going to go with Arizona quarterback Carson Palmer. I know what you guys are thinking. Don't kill me for this, but listen, Palmer is facing the Colts defense, who Jared Goff just completely lit up last week. I don't know if you guys saw that. The Rams won 46-9. I believe that was a score. It wasn't a typo. 46-9. Palmer is a veteran, a savvy veteran. He still has fits back there. I know Arian said this offseason that John Brown's no starting level wide receiver. Well, I think John Brown definitely heard those comments. So he's going to come out and he's going to have a hell of a game, I'd say, as long as with Carson Palmer. So I'd look for Carson Palmer to at least.
Definitely Carson Palmer is a good guy there. And fantasy owners might get scared with David Johnson going to be out for a good amount of time. But what we saw from that Indianapolis defense is just Jared Goff has far from proven himself to be a great quarterback. He has a lot of potential going here, but he ran all over that Colts defense. So Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald should be able to do the same.
I agree. Let's send it over to Dillon. Let's move on to the running back position for week 2.
Yeah, we're going to start on running backs here, and my guy is Beast Mode. I've always loved Beast Mode. He was the only Seahawk I could ever tolerate, but everybody has been kind of counting him out going into this season just because they didn't know how the retirement was going to affect him. But I've been pretty high on Marshawn Lynch. I think he's going to be just fine. but this week especially is good, should be a good week for him. Last week he had 76 yards in the 2017 debut. No touchdowns coming out of it, but that's not good for fantasy owners, but I mean, you can work with it. But this week they're facing the Jets. And I think the only comparable team to what the Colts showed last week is the New York Jets. Those are probably the two biggest jokes of the NFL at this point. And LaShawn McCoy last week rushed for 110 yards on them. And then Mike Tolbert did 42 yards. So I think with how much insanely better the Raiders' offensive line is than the Bills is, how could Marshawn Lynch not run all over this Jets defense too?
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. Defense is horrible. The Jets and the Colts, I don't know if you guys got a chance to check out our NB9ers power rankings last week, but I believe for the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, they're 31, 32, and that is horrible. The Colts have been
there all year.
Exactly. The Colts are a horrible franchise masking themselves as a good franchise because they have Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. For my by the way, Dillon, I love that pick because I drafted Marshawn myself in my league. So we'll hope he has a good game. So moving on to my pick, I'm going to go with Green Bay running back Ty Montgomery. Montgomery is a PPR machine coming out of the backfield. The Falcons struggled mightily last week with giving up 8 catches for 47 yards and a score. Look for that to continue this week with Montgomery. Aaron Rodgers has been lighting it up. Surprised to see them go to Montgomery to take a little bit of pressure off of Rodgers. Last week they tore apart the Seahawks. I wouldn't expect them to do anything less against the Falcons, who have, I'd say, a lesser compared defense.
Definitely. I haven't always been the highest on Ty Montgomery, but I do think we'll see some success from him. We saw more success from him than I thought we would last week, and I wouldn't be surprised to see even more this upcoming week. So, my second running back this week is Devontae Freeman. Freeman's over there with Atlanta, and last week he definitely didn't impress anybody, but he was going against this Bears defense. The Bears defense is a solid defense. They may not have everything together yet as a team, but they've got it together on the defense. I'll give them that. They held him to 37 yards, and that's not – nobody's used to seeing that from Devontae Freeman. So it's a little weird, but they are bringing the Packers into their brand-new stadium, and I think you're in to see Freeman have an excellent game. That Packers defense is never strong. It's like nothing ever helps them. Every year, it's just the Aaron Rodgers show. So I see no reason why Devontae Freeman can't absolutely run all over them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think Devontae Freeman's going to be running mad. Not to mention, I'd be mad too if they put a Chick-fil-A in my home stadium that's closed on game day. Make any sense to me, man?
I don't get that one either, but
yeah. All right, moving on. My second running back is rookie running back out of Minnesota, Dalvin Cook. Now, we all last time faithful saw Dalvin Cook. He was getting lit up by Reuben Foster, but expect that to be different. The Vikings rookie broke the record held by none other than back Adrian Peterson for the most rushing records by a rookie debut. The Vikings have a lot of weapons on the outside. They got Stephon Diggs. They got Adam Thielen. They got all around, not to mention Bradford's looking really good. I know he had that little bit of a knee scare, I believe I saw on Twitter earlier. Something about his knee went down. He's getting an MRI, but Vikings to lean on Dalvin Cook heavily this week, and I'd say he well.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook's definitely in a position to be one of the – I loved Dalvin Cook coming out of this draft class. I had no idea. Well, I mean, I know why he dropped, but he shouldn't have dropped. I think a lot of teams are going to regret letting Dalvin Cook pass by them. I really do.
Yeah, it's not that often you see a running
But
back with his caliber drop that far.
oh yeah, I love Dalvin Cook coming out of there. It's a shame that he dropped that far, but not for Minnesota. And I think they will be able to make him another great Minnesota Viking. All right, and that we're gonna go ahead and move on to the wide receivers at this point. My first guy this week is Brandon Cooks. I really like Brandon Cooks going into this week. Everybody likes Brandon Cooks going into this entire season. He's going to be joining Tom Brady, and you have to know that Tom Brady and the Patriots are not happy about what happened last week. I mean, you can't be happy with that showing. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see a massive game by Tom Brady. Not to mention, they're going against the New Orleans Saints, who are famous for an awful pass defense. Anytime Drew Brees and Tom Brady meet, it's just an all-out aerial warfare. So, I mean, Brandon Cooks has got to get a ton of that.
Yeah, I remember seeing something this week on Twitter. It was an NFL article, I believe, saying something along the lines of Brandon Cooks going deep. The Saints defense won't allow that. I had to put my phone down. I was laughing so hard. I'm just I'm like, are we watching the same Saints defense? I agree with you, man. I think Brandon Cooks and Tom Brady is absolutely going to tear it up. I know a lot of people were questioning why we put the Patriots at number 1 again on this second week of the Nothing But Niners Power Rankings. I just had one thing to say. Did you guys happen to see what happened last time Tom Brady was doubted? I don't want to be on an angry end of that duo. Moving on to my wide receiver, I'm going to go ahead and go with Oakland wide receiver Amari Cooper. Cooper was tied for second in the league last week with 13 targets. Although he only had 5 catches, he was targeted 3 times in a row inside the red zone. Those are some pretty eye-popping stats. That's showing that's Derek Carr's guy. I mean, Crabtree's had his success there, but let's be honest, the future in Oakland, everybody knows it. It's the current. So look for that to continue. Raiders are playing a really bad New York Jets team. So look for Cooper to tear it up this week.
All right, and my second wide receiver is going to be Tyreek Hill with the Kansas City Chiefs. He had a great debut this season where Alex Smith and him and Kareem Hunt absolutely tore up the Patriots. With Smith threw for 368 yards, and 133 of those yards were to Tyreek Hill. So that performance, it got overshadowed by what Alex Smith did and what Kareem Hunt did, because Tyreek Hill definitely deserves some credit for the game that he had as well. But what that also did is it just showed you that Tyreek Hill is going to be the pass catcher. He's going to be that guy that Alex Smith can go to whenever he needs to. So I'm really high on Tyreek Hill, and they're going to be going against the Eagles. The Eagles have been a joke for a long time, but this year they aren't to be taken as lightly. They've got a much better team, but the defense hasn't improved enough, in my opinion. And when they lost Ronald Darby for a few weeks, it's going to make it really hard for that secondary that already wasn't the best, but to keep up with Tyreek Hill, it's going to be even harder. So I'm really high on Tyreek Hill, and while I send you on to your next wide receiver, I'm going to go plug up my computer real quick just so we can stay alive.
Yeah, probably a good idea. So while he charges his computer, I'm going to take you guys to Arizona wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald, just like Amari Cooper, saw 13 targets last week and had 6 receptions for 74 yards. He wasn't able to find the end zone, but we're looking for that to change versus the Colts. We were just talking earlier that the Colts and the Jets have worst rosters in the NFL, which is saying a lot with the league filled with Cleveland and the likes of San Francisco, even Chicago you could throw up there. But I think Fitzgerald's going to tear it up, also, along with my quarterback selection. If you guys remember Carson Palmer, look for them to totally slice apart this Colts secondary.
All right, for sure. And that's it for the wide receivers. So next up is the tight ends. Tight ends, they're always a hard one because if you don't get one of the top maybe 7, I'd say. You're just kind of going for a lower end guy. But this guy isn't one. The guy that I picked for this one isn't one that you like normally hear out of those big names like Travis Kelce, Gronk, Greg. But I'm gonna go with Charles Clay over with the Bills, just because Clay is the absolute last receiving target other than LaShawn McCoy out of the backfield that Tyrod Taylor still has his trust in. They've started a tank, kind of. I don't call it a tank until they let LaShawn McCoy leave too. So, I mean, Charles Clay is the only guy that they really have over there. And if the Panthers are smart, which they're a smart organization, they're going to try to shut down LaShawn McCoy, and that's the way that they know they have to go if they want to win that game. So that opens up Charles Clay for a lot more targets this week.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, man. It's hard to see what they're doing in Buffalo. I think Tyrod Taylor's a solid quarterback, and it's hard to see what, they're kind of stripping the team, like you said, and kind of saying if you want the money, prove you can pretty much carry the team on your own. Yeah. For my tight end, I know you guys are probably going to kill me for this, but I'm going to go with none other than Jimmy Graham from Seattle. Graham was pretty much non-existent last week. He had 3 catches for only 8 yards. Unfortunately, I'd say look for those things look for that to change pretty heavily this week against the 49ers. Linebacker and coverage, which is rookie linebacker Reuben Foster, which means either Navarro Bowman or Ray Armstrong is going to be on him in coverage, which just doesn't match up. Jimmy Graham's like 5'6" or something like that. The dude's huge. He's an ex-basketball player. So look for him to totally exploit these matchups against the 49ers.
For sure. I'm looking it up right now just because I don't remember. But I'll be interested to see that. I wonder if Jimmy Graham's going to break out because I think he will, don't get me wrong. But what I just thought about is it surprised me how much the Panthers didn't go to Greg Olsen. I looked it up.
Yeah, I thought that too.
2 receptions for 18 yards. It's not like we were putting that much pressure on him. I don't know why they wouldn't go to the guy that gets 1,000.
At the same time, I mean, you saw Cam miss a wide open Ed Dixon in the end zone, so it's like they were probably facing their own set of issues.
Cam had a rough game. He's just lucky that the entire 49ers team had a rough game. So
they had an even worse game.
Yeah. So that's it for all the skill players there, but we have the defense coming up. For this week, I chose the Arizona Cardinals just because they're going against the Indianapolis Colts, and I don't care who it is, Tolzien or what's his name? Jacoby Brissett. I don't care. Neither one of them is going to be anything on that Colts team. T.Y. Hilton is not getting – T.Y. Hilton doesn't have his Andrew Luck. So T.Y. Hilton's not going to be anywhere. You just won't see much from the Colts at all until Andrew Luck can get healthy. Basically, the rest of that team's absolutely worthless. I mean, Jacoby Brissett, people may think that he's going to break out. I don't think so. I think he worked beautifully in Belichick's system. But going into Indianapolis, it shouldn't work out for him, especially with Patrick Peterson.
Yeah, no way. Who was the last backup Patriots quarterback to succeed?
Exactly. And
Matt Castle had somewhat of a success. I guess you could call it a success. And he went to Kansas City. I think he had something like 11-5 season the following season. But no backup Patriots quarterback succeeds elsewhere. It doesn't happen. It's just insane. Look at Ryan Mallett. Look at
it doesn't happen.
Any quarterback you want to say. No. Probably Jimmy G in the future as well. It's not going to happen. They set their quarterbacks up for success. For my defense,
I think it could possibly work for Jimmy G, but I also don't think we'll ever know because I think Belichick is going to keep him around until Tom Brady's days are done.
Yep, you're probably right. They know those days are numbered.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, man.
So moving on, my defensive pick, I'm going to go with the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders, like I said earlier, they're going up against a porous New York Jets team this week. I don't think I have to say any more than that. This is going to be an easy one. Look for the Raiders to eat.
Definitely. That's really all you need to say. I mean, what is Josh McCown going to do, honestly? And the Raiders' defense wasn't even a defense that we saw last year, and we were like, that's a good defense. Khalil Mack was about the only good thing on that defense. But, I mean, what are we going to see from the Jets? I mean, I love Jeremy Curley, but nobody's going to throw him.
Yeah, that's my dude, man. That's my dude. I wish him nothing but the best, but
the only hope that the Jets have is getting a run game started with Matt Forte and Bilal Powell. And I think somehow they'll mess that up too. So, I mean, the Raiders is definitely a good pick. But now we're moving on into the sits this week. So these are the guys that you definitely don't want in your lineup this week because it's not looking good for them. So for the quarterback, my guy this week is Kirk Cousins. And that's going to be heartbreaking for a lot of people just because Kirk's one of those quarterbacks you take a little higher up. But he did not have a good first game. He threw 240 yards, 1 interception, and 2 fumbles. It was disappointing to say the least. And like I said, that was against the Eagles, who they are division rival, but that defense still isn't an elite defense. So it leaves the question, did Kirk rely too much on his 2,000-yard receivers that have both left? And now I would sit him this week just because going against the Rams with that incredible pass rush, I would wait until Kirk Cousins can prove that last week was just a fluke and that he is still Washington's great quarterback that can throw it down the field like nobody's business.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you on that one, man. Kirk Cousins did not look the same last week without Pierre Garçon, like you were saying, Pierre Garçon or Deshaun Jackson. The guy looked like a ghost of his old self. For my sits, I'm going to go with Dallas quarterback Dak Prescott. He didn't play too bad last week against the Giants. He threw for 268 yards and 1 touchdown, but he is going up against a much stronger defense this week with the Denver Broncos to give Dak a lot of trouble. This is going to be a heavy run game type game, and it's going to be a who can make the least amount of mistakes. I don't think the young Dak is going to play that well this week, so I would go ahead and keep him on the bench.
Yeah, if you've ever followed me on Twitter, you for sure know that I'm not the biggest Dak supporter, and I'll probably get hate just for saying that right now on this podcast. But I'm not stupid enough to know that Dak Prescott is a successful quarterback in this league. I won't go into why I think he's successful, but he puts up points as a fantasy quarterback. But this week, it's not a good plan. You saw Phillip Rivers, who is a seasoned veteran at this quarterback. He's a good fantasy pickup too, and he wasn't anything. I mean, that Denver defense is way too good.
Yep. No, perfectly said. There's a small chance that Dak has a really good game, but I just don't see it happening.
Be absolutely shocked, and I might have to take away everything bad I've said about Dak. I won't, no matter what happens. Yep. But I should.
What's more likely for you? Hoyer goes into Seattle this week and throws for 450 yards, 2 TDs, and lights it up for 450 yards and 2 TDs against Denver.
And between those two things, I don't know, man. I think it's more likely that Bortles goes out and does that.
Wow, you dropped a Blake Bortles bomb. Oof.
Those are 2 quarterbacks that I wouldn't want in my fantasy lineup this week for sure. But if I had to pick one, I'd say it's more likely that Dak does it just because they're the better team. But I still don't think they'll do it.
Let's move on before we piss off more people.
All right. So moving on to the running backs. the first guy I picked is a guy that everybody was really high on going into this season. Fantasy owners all throughout Twitter absolutely loved Amir Abdullah. But what we saw in week 1 proved why I was hesitant about Amir Abdullah. That he's still going to share time in that backfield. They haven't figured out for themselves, but it doesn't help fantasy owners. It's like a mini version of what Bill Belichick does with all of his running backs. So Amir Abdullah, right now, he just won't be able to get the fantasy points that he needs to be in your starting lineup. And they're going against the Giants defense. And the Giants defense didn't look absolutely stellar last week. But since the beginning of last season, the Giants have only allowed 2 running backs to get 100-yard rushing games. And those 2 are Ezekiel Elliott and Le'Veon Bell. And I'm sorry, Amir Abdullah, but you're not Ezekiel Elliott or Le'Veon Bell. So don't expect Amir Abdullah to be starter quality this week.
Yep, no, definitely nowhere near those backs. For my running back, I know I said let's move on before I piss more people off, but I guess I was one player too soon because I'm going to go with Carlos Hyde.
That's brutal here.
I know, man. I know. Don't kill me for it. I know Guapa looked great when he had the opportunity, but the keywords, I should say. The 49ers got down pretty early, and Hyde only carried the ball 2 times in the entire second half of last week's matchup versus the Panthers. I don't know if you know this, but Seattle's usually regarded as a pretty tough place to play. I don't think he's going to find that much success over with the 12th man, unfortunately. The Seahawks have a talented, monstrous defensive line, excuse me. So I don't think I find too much success for Carlos Hyde this week. So keep him on your bench, faithful. Store him for next week.
Yeah, I'm really high on Carlos Hyde this season, but not only in this game is he going to be going against that monstrous Seattle defense that somehow finds a way to improve every year. I don't understand. But
I don't know how they do it, man.
I
don't know how they do it.
But I also think Kyle Shanahan is still trying to figure himself out as an offensive coordinator. I thought he should have used Hyde more last week than he did. And I think he's still trying to figure out exactly what he wants this offense to be. So it's a little tough to want to start any of the 49ers at this point.
Yep, no other way to put it, man. No, I would say just about every single 49er right now is on a do not start list until they can prove otherwise. I mean, it's just as sad as it is to say it. They have to prove that they can be trusted, and right now they cannot be trusted.
Part 2 of the sit list is every 49er. Don't.
I'd say keep Robbie Gould off that list. He's probably your safest bet.
Yeah, he might still be okay. But other than that, don't start him. All right, my second running back this week is another guy that people in fantasy Twitter absolutely lost their minds for. And this one I did fall for. I liked him a lot, which was Isaiah Crowell. And I made the mistake of liking a Browns player. I don't know why I did it, but I fell for the trap because the Browns have done so much in improving that offense. They made a great offensive line, but the fact of the matter is they're still the Browns. So they still aren't going to do it right. And Isaiah Crowell, even behind that really good offensive line, he had 33 yards in week 1. And this week they're going to be going against the Ravens. And while the Ravens aren't really known for anything, really, they're just kind of there. But, I mean, they're definitely not necessarily known for their run defense. They shut down the Bengals run game last week, too. So, I mean, we'll find out. I don't think Isaiah Crowell is in your starting fantasy lineup this week. It's just a guy that you might want to stay away from until Cleveland can figure themselves out too. And I don't know if that'll ever happen. Yeah,
not anytime soon. Man, you guys are really going to be coming after me with pitchforks after this because my next running back on the sit list is our beloved Frank the Tank Gore. I know, man. We all love Frank, man, but I think his time may be coming to an end soon. I don't know if you guys saw, but last week Gore lost a touchdown to Marlon Mack. Also, we talked about it earlier, Jacoby Brissett is going to be starting in the place of ex-49er Scott Tolzien. They're in a completely different solar system than Andrew Luck right now. So every single defense knows they're going to be running it until that they can't. So right now they're going to be stacking that box up. Frank Gore is going to be – he's going to have a very, very low yards per carry average this weekend. And until Andrew Luck gets back, really, because they're just going to keep stacking that box. They know what's going to be coming 40, 50 times Jacoby Brissett to throw it. So
for sure. We talked a little bit about what that Cardinals defense had earlier, and it's going to be good. I talked about their pass defense, but I'm trying to remember. Hassan Reddick, that's his name. That rookie linebacker that they got, he's going to be special. I liked Hassan Reddick.
He's a beast.
I liked him a lot. I almost wanted to move back a little bit in the draft to get him. But, I mean, he's a solid linebacker, and he's one of those guys that you don't want Frank to meet, honestly. He's still a rookie, so, I mean, Frank could still win the battle. Don't get me wrong. But there's going to be a lot of guys on Frank, just like you said. Everybody knows they're running it.
Yep.
All right, well, that's it for the running backs, and I'm going to go ahead and move into the wide receiver set. My first guy is Dez Bryant. He's the star receiver over in Dallas, and this 2017 offseason, everybody talked about how it was Dez Bryant's best offseason. He was working out. He looked better than he had ever had before up against the Giants defense and got 43 yards. Now, I'm not saying that the Giants defense is bad because they are a good defense, but the Broncos defense is much better. Okay. So if he only got 43 yards against the Giants, I'm not sure I want to see him against the Broncos, especially since you know that the Cowboys have to know that they're going to have to lean heavily on Ezekiel Elliott to win this game.
Most definitely. Let's see. Moving on to my wide receiver, I am going to go with another Indianapolis Colt, T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton, he kind of fooled people, fantasy owners especially, into thinking he's this big play threat. I mean, he's got a large amount of 20-yard plus catches in his career. But the last few seasons, man, I feel like after he earned that contract extension, he has just not been the same player, especially without Andrew Luck in the backfield. Hilton had 3 catches for 57 yards and lost a fumble last week. It looks like right now he's nothing more than a wide receiver 4 until Luck is back in the starting lineup, which who knows how long that'll be.
I'll be honest, I got tricked by the TY train too. In one of my leagues, I know that I took him just because I didn't know that Andrew Luck was going to be gone this long. It's like
they kept that under hush pretty well.
Like every day, more bad news out of Indy. It started with, Andrew Luck might miss week 1. And then it comes up and he's like, he
might miss training camp.
So, I mean,
yeah.
I swear next thing you know is going to be like, he's going to miss the whole season. And then everybody's out of luck.
I'm just going to get a notification. Andrew Luck has retired.
Oh, that'd be brutal. All right. My last wide receiver for the list, another guy you want to sit this week, is Jamison Crowder. It goes right up there with the Kirk Cousins sit that I had earlier. But I was fully on the Jamison Crowder hype train. He was coming in at that wide receiver 2 slot, which last year was a 1,000-yard receiving slot by whoever you want to say was the 2 in Pierre Garçon or Deshaun Jackson. So, I mean, you had to like him. He's one of the guys that won me a fantasy championship last year. I liked him a lot. I thought he was going to have a good year. but then he goes out and he hauls in 3 catches for 14 yards. And like I said earlier, Cousins is going to get that Rams pass defense. It's going to be another rough game for Jamison Crowder, honestly. And that makes me kind of sad because he was a guy I was counting on to be that low-key wide receiver pickup.
Yeah, man. Trey Crowder flashed some tremendous potential last season. It's sad to see he's not able to capitalize on that huge opportunity he has right now in DC. My pick, I'm going to go, of course, like we said earlier, 49ers can't be trusted. It's going to another 49er wide receiver, Pierre Garçon. Although he had a solid week last week, especially in PPR leagues, I don't think that's going to continue at all this week. Like I said earlier, the 49ers are heading into Seattle to take on the Seahawks, and I don't think he's going to have a good week at all. Although Richard Sherman does not follow receivers around, we all know, that's still a very hard-hitting, very physical defense, and I think Garçon's going to have a tough time getting open, even finding the little pockets in the zone defenses. So I don't think Garçon's a player that you want in your starting lineup at all this week.
And like we said about everybody on the 49ers is a do not start, I think if there were any chance that one of them could be a start, it would have to be Garçon. But even then, I wouldn't.
Especially in a PPR league.
I would not take that chance just because we saw what that offensive line held up against on the Panthers, and I'd definitely be willing to say that they're going to get even more pressure from Seattle. And
definitely.
All right, well, my tight end that's on the do not start list this week is Jesse James. He was one of the best tight ends coming into last week. He got 41 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's always something you want to watch out for when you see a tight end with big points, because you don't always want a touchdown reliant tight end because it doesn't always work. But the Steelers were facing the Browns, and this week they'll be going against the Vikings defense, which is leaps and bounds ahead of that Browns defense. For now, the Browns defense has a chance, but for now, the Vikings defense is definitely leaps and bounds ahead. But the Browns were also able to hold Le'Veon Bell to 32 yards, which is why I say there is potential. They are working on that running game, but I wouldn't be surprised that the Steelers want to get Le'Veon Bell going this week, and that would take even more targets away from Jesse James.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the tight end with 2 first names as well. Hunter Henry out of Tennessee. Henry had 0 targets last week. He was primarily used as a blocking tight end, and he was only in the game for 30 snaps. It's pretty hard to trust a guy who had 0 targets, a fat goose egg. We got to see it. We got to see him improve. We got to see him get in the game for a lot more than 30 snaps. We got to see him get some targets before we can even talk about putting this guy in at a flex position, tight end, even, lower end. He has to prove himself completely at this point. So keep Hunter Henry on your bench if he's even on your team.
Yeah. All right. And coming down to the defenses for the week, I'm going with the Steelers. So I hit 2 Steelers there in a row. But the Steelers defense, they're getting a lot of hype building up with TJ Watt having a good week. But this week they have more of a challenge. Like I said, they're going against Minnesota. Sam Bradford looked like an elite quarterback. I don't mind even saying that he looked like an elite quarterback. He hit every throw perfect. Who knows if that's going to continue, but I'd be afraid going against that, especially with Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph too. And then Dalvin Cook is looking like a beast back there so far. So that's an offense that's ready to go at it. And I think the Steelers are going to have to game plan very well if they want to contain both the threats that we've seen there so far.
Yeah, man. I'm really happy for Sam Bradford. I'm happy that he's coming into his own, especially now that he's out of the NFC West. it's easy for everyone. Everybody wins. My defense for this week for sit, I'm going to go with the New England Patriots. We all saw them struggle against an Alex Smith-led Chiefs. He'll now be going up against Drew Brees and the Saints. Could turn into a real shootout. I don't think the Patriots are going to be able to hold the Saints offense to a low-scoring game. So keep the Patriots on the bench.
Yeah, they're definitely somebody you want to let feel out a little bit too. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for the start and sit portion of Nothing But Fantasy. And like I said, we got one more little section coming in here, and that's the free agency waiver pickup of the week. It's just going to be one of those guys that I explained a little earlier, but I'll give you a refresher. It's just going to be one of those guys that you probably didn't draft them, and they're probably still a free agent, but they showed out in the past and have built a name for themselves. That's always hard to do after just 1 week of playing, just because you don't know what exactly is going to translate from last week. But for me this week, I'm going to go with Tariq Cohen. He's going to make a lot of people that drafted Jordan Howard very unhappy, just because that's your first round pick, and Tariq Cohen looks like he's going in there to try to steal that starting running back job. And if not, he's at least going to take a lot of carries away from Howard. Cohen is an extremely athletic back. He came out of North Carolina A&T. That's my home state there. So I remember watching him in the combine, and I watched his 40, and I was like, wow, that kid is fast. And now we're finally starting to see it all come together. He could be a pretty big runner in that Bears offense, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him out of the backfield some too. A lot of people have compared him to a Darren Sproles, but like a shiftier and a little bit better Darren Sproles. So there's definitely some size worry on Cohen, just like there was with Darren Sproles. But I don't think this is a player that you want to miss out on. I think you can always make room on your bench for Tariq Cohen.
Yeah, he definitely made a name for himself in week 1, man. A lot of people I think I got a notification that he was one of the most added names football. So he's flying up there. His stock is flying. For my pickup of the week, I'm going to go with Arizona Cardinals running back Kerwin Williams. We all know David Johnson. He is a MVP caliber type back, 2 to 3 months. So who's going to fill in for that? That's running back 1 potential. Williams will get the first shot, and not to mention, for his first audition, he goes up against a Swiss cheese Indianapolis Colts defense. So I'd look for Williams to light it up this week, possibly even, for the next long David Johnson's going to be out. Look for Williams to lock that spot down. You have a little bit of a worry with a running back by committee. Might happen in Arizona, but at least right now, Kerwin Williams has the first shot at that starting position. Get him while he's hot, guys, because into a running back 1 for you this season, and you would have heard it here first. Nothing But Niners week 2.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. That's it. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you guys.